The Black Death, one of the darkest events in human history. Have you ever stopped to think about how a single disease could decimate millions of people and change the course of history forever? And more importantly, why, despite the fact that it still exists, is it no longer a global threat? Stay tuned, because what we've learned from the Black Death may be the key to understanding the present. To understand terror, we need to go back to the 14th century. The Black Death wasn't a supernatural mystery but rather a real disease, caused by a bacterium named Yersinia pestis. She didn't come from nothing. She traveled, mainly by commercial ships, which brought, in addition to spices and fabrics, something far less desired: rats infected with fleas. It was these fleas that were the true villains of the story. They bit the rats, became infected, and when the rats died, they jumped to a new host, human beings. The disease spread like wildfire. From Central Asia, it reached Europe through Italian ports and, in just 4 years, it swept across the entire continent. The result? An estimated 75 to 200 million people died. In some places, more than half of the population simply disappeared. Imagine living in a city where fear was palpable and death was everywhere. The already unsanitary streets became open-air cemeteries. Entire families disappeared in days. The medicine of the time, based on incorrect theories, was ineffective. Doctors wore beak-like masks filled with herbs and spices, believing that bad air was the cause of the disease. In reality, this practice, though misguided, ended up protecting some of them from airborne contagion of the pneumonic plague. People tried everything: prayers, public penance, rituals, and even mass escapes, which paradoxically helped to spread the disease even further. The Black Death was terrifying because it attacked in 3 different ways. Bubonic plague. This was the most common form. The bacteria would enter the body and cause the lymph nodes to swell, forming painful, dark lumps, the famous buboes. The mortality rate was high, but not 100%. Pneumonic plague. This form was even more terrifying. The bacterium would go to the lungs and the person would begin to cough up blood. In this case, transmission was from person to person, through the air. It was a much faster and more lethal form of infection. Septicemic plague, the rarest and most fatal form. The bacteria invaded the bloodstream, causing a generalized infection. It was so fast that the victim could die in a matter of hours, before the buboes even appeared. Panic was widespread. People didn't know how to protect themselves. They believed it was divine punishment. Society collapsed. The Black Death wasn't just a disease. It shaped history and left deep marks on the economy, society, and culture. The Black Death was a catalyst for the downfall of the feudal system. Labor, which was once abundant, suddenly became scarce. This allowed peasants and workers to demand higher wages and better working conditions, something that was unthinkable before the plague. This new power dynamic shook the social structures and contributed to the weakening of feudal lords and the strengthening of trade in the cities. Widespread death led to a surge in interest in the theme of mortality. In art, works like the Danse Macabre, Dance of Death, emerged, which depicted death leading people from all social classes, kings, priests, and peasants, away, showing that everyone was equal in the face of the disease. This new focus on human beings and their transience, combined with a crisis of faith, laid the foundation for the beginning of a new era. It is as if the Black Death cleared the ground for the Renaissance, which valued life, science, and reason. Although medicine at the time was ineffective, the Black Death forced doctors to seek new ways of understanding and treating diseases. With the Church's permission for body dissections, human anatomy began to be studied in more detail. This new approach, based on observation and experimentation, was fundamental to the advancement of medicine centuries later. If you're enjoying the content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe so you don't miss the next videos. Even though the bubonic plague has not been completely eradicated, the threat of a global pandemic is very low today, thanks to advances in science and basic sanitation. However, isolated outbreaks can still occur, especially in rural areas where hygiene is poor and people live in close proximity to animals that carry the disease. Leave your opinion here in the comments. What was the part of the Black Death's history that surprised you the most? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell to not miss the next videos.